Okay, everyone, welcome. I'm very proud to introduce Sarah Jane Rose, founder of Sally's List, and Alyssa Fisher of Sally's List. They're here to talk to us today about the challenges of women seeking political access and seeking political position within government. So welcome, Sarah Jane and Alyssa.
Thank you. We're honored to be here with you.
So excited.
Oh, it's an honor to have you guys here to share with our audience through the conference, Building Bridges, Dismantling Racism. And I have a couple of questions to ask. One, women are clearly disadvantaged in the political process. Can you explain to us how Sally's List attempts to address the both intra-group differences between women and the intergroup differences that permeate across race and class?
Sure. I'm actually going to punt to Alyssa on this pretty quickly because our trainings in the past have been big and open and full of people, but it was just if you want to run or you're thinking of working on a campaign, come to our training. We never delineated between different groups of women. And we successful trainings, but I will let Alyssa talk to you about the last training we had was in 2019, one in Oklahoma City, one in Tulsa. We had a fairly diverse audience, but afterwards Alyssa came to me with a question and she's acted upon it. So I'm going to let her actually talk about that first.
Well, thank you, Sarah Jane. First, I would say that across the board, women face unique barriers when it comes to running for office. We know that even during the pandemic, we were seeing statistics coming out talking about how women are still doing the majority of housework in heterosexual relationships, so there's still a very unique division of labor that women experience in the home and even outside of the home. And that's just one of many different things that can impact, a woman's decision to run for office. So Sally's List is here to ask women to run for office. And we know that women often have to be asked. The statistic says 3 times or more before they decide to run. So we ask over and over again. But as Sarah Jane mentioned, after one of our larger group trainings that was sort of a big tent training, it was, what year was that, Sarah Jane? I can't even remember.
2 years ago.
2019. Yeah, that fall. I had been really fortunate to study social justice at the University of Oklahoma and been provided a wide array of great intersectional literature in that process. So I was aware that women of color and women who identify within the LGBTQ community face even more unique hurdles when it comes to making the decision to run for office, and especially in a place like Oklahoma where resources are so limited. So one aspect of Sally's List programming that I think we're both very proud of is that we have developed early on in 2020, holy cow. We had started developing a program for women of color specifically, and then the pandemic hit, but we still made it happen that spring or summer. It's hard to remember time really, but so 2020 was the last event we had, and we're having another one May 15th, 2021. So it's upcoming. But we really have tried to expand our programming to address some of the more specific concerns that women of color face when making the choice to run for office. And a lot of that comes from, resources regarding things like, I don't know who to ask to help me to run for office. I don't know if I'm in a place financially where I can run for office right now, but we have people who we bring in that can coach and mentor these women long past the program itself to try and ease their concerns and encourage more women of color to either run for office or get engaged in the process of helping other women of color run for office.
And in terms of unique challenges for women of color, it is, and I know these are very broad numbers, but they say that women, when they're fundraising to run for office, they have to work twice as hard as men. They get a yes 50% of the time. Women of color get a yes 25% of the time. So they're already hobbled by fundraising. And also what they face at the doors. We've had women of color, and when they're knocking on doors, not a lot of that this last cycle because of COVID, but before that, and you know, a Black woman running for city council in Norman, someone answered the door with a gun in their hand. We had not one of our candidates, but someone we talked to who had run for a VOTEC, Metrotech board. She's Latina, and she'd knock on the door, and the first thing they asked her was, "Are you legal?" It is difficult, and we've talked to women about running, especially in the Latina community, and they just don't want to put themselves
There's
out there to
so
be
much
abused.
emotional labor involved just running for office by itself. But when you consider the trauma that women of color are already faced with every day, and then multiply it by like 100, that's not even coming close to what so many women of color face when they make the choice to run for office, which is why they are so heroic and why we want to support them and be everything we can for them when they make the choice to do something like this. I mean, we desperately need more Indigenous women. We desperately need more Latinx women. We need more Black women. We need more women who represent real Oklahomans. And the system as it exists today has been designed to make it almost impossible for them to succeed in this kind of venture. And so that's why we're here.
Well, first of all, let me say to both you, Alyssa, and Sarah, a big thank you, because with the challenges faced, it is so very essential to have a safety net, to have that support system by which to gain information from, but also to have just that emotional support.
Yeah.
So for any one of the people who are participating within the conference, if you are a woman who seeks to run for political office, and we really need as many people as possible to engage local politics first and foremost.
Yeah.
Sally's List is the resource. And I can only emphasize that 100 times if you are a woman of color. Sally's List is the toolkit, offers the toolkit that is needed in order to not only survive the process, but to thrive through the journey.
Yeah. And one, you know, obviously Alyssa mentioned it, but the beautiful thing about her training is all of the presenters are women of color. I mean, look at us. We are clearly white women, and we obviously are becoming more sensitive to the fact that maybe we're not the ones to answer questions. We're not the ones to help them, women of color, when they're running, talk about what they fear the most. So we are building up a collection of women they can talk to instead of us. We're not always the right people to talk to for all of our women at some point in time, but we're really committed, greatly committed to this.
It's going to take, you know, a large community movement to make great change possible. And so we are just trying to welcome and gather, you know, we're like, come, let's be friends and allies and make this work.
Well, that leads me to another question, if I may ask. What sort of historical tradition of radicalism, because that's what I'm hearing, radicalism, activism, grassroots work, what sort of tradition in that vein is Sally's List modeled after?
Well, I am going to be honest with you. When I founded Sally's List in 2010, I had no experience whatsoever in politics. Someone, I'd done a little bit of fundraising, and someone who I respected a lot said to me, "You need to do this. There's a group in Texas, Annie's List, that is doing recruiting and training Democrat pro-choice women, and you need to do this." And I love talking to people. So the first thing I did was call the executive director and the board chair in Texas and grilled them with questions. And after that, we had our first meeting of a bunch of people who just came together and for feedback, and decided very quickly to be Democrat pro-choice was very limiting in a place like Oklahoma, where there are so many other issues facing women besides choice. Some of them equally as important, some on certain days more important. So we did decide to have a broader set of issues, but fortunately that summer, this group Annie's List they got in touch with every group like theirs they could find in the country, and we all came together for a weekend. That's where our tradition came from. Three of us went. It was Alyssa's been on board for 4 years. This is about 11 years ago. And we learned from all these other groups. And it is my form of grassroots, modeled on nothing I really know, is, like I said, to talk to everybody I can who can give me some knowledge. So I sat down with every politician who would talk to me, generally Democrats, including at the time, Connie Johnson was in office. Oh gosh, Alyssa, who was the wonderful woman from Tulsa?
I cannot remember names at this point,
but
post-pandemic.
I talked to every woman and man who I thought could help me understand what had to happen and how it had to happen. And that's where my knowledge came from. It was very much based. Yeah, it was what people who had been there did to get there. So that's where it's from. I think when people say grassroots, for many years I thought, well, that's not us. I never would have said we were a grassroots organization. But recently I went, oh my God, we're a grassroots organization. Yeah. I just never, I don't know. I didn't understand, I guess, what grassroots meant, but we are definitely grassroots.
Absolutely.
So, we're 11 years old now, and we've been around for a long time, and we've had big events. So interestingly, in 18, before the 18 election, after Trump's election 2016, a lot of new groups popped up, and with similar missions to ours in the state, 2 or 3 of them. And we always wondered why we hadn't gotten a phone call, because I would have called people before I started doing something just to see what was going on. And we would talk to them. We'd bump into them at street fairs and email them and say, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing this? We're just curious. We're here for you. And they really had no interest in talking to us at all, because we're now looking a bit like the old gray lady of women's politics in Oklahoma City, just by virtue of being 11 years old. And at that time, about eight years old. But we learn on the run. I mean, I tell people my learning curve has been steep for 11 years. I learn every day, and talking to you, Dr. Anderson, has been a educational opportunity I'm not sure I ever would have had I not heard about you and been introduced to you. You have taught me a lot about what Alyssa and I need to be doing more of. Right. So my form of education is just talk to a lot of people who know what they're doing.
And I think that speaks to, what's desperately needed right now. I think that speaks to a very old vein of community organizing, which is genuinely based in person-to-person, face-to-face contact and seeing the humanity of your neighbors. And when I think about the legacy of Sally's List and the history of where our work comes from, I really do think of the community organizers who are already existing in small places that we don't know their names. We don't know about the people who are making sure their neighbors get fed or making sure their neighbors get rides to the doctor's office or whatever. That's community organizing too. And I think that that's kind of that public service, that honest caring about the humanity of your neighbors and the humanity of your community, the humanity of the people who make up your community. That's where Sally's List comes from. And frankly, I believe that Sarah Jane doesn't give herself enough credit. I think that when you're in a space, you already know everything you need to know about what needs to change. You just need to have people along the way who are going to support you and guide you and help you see that more clearly. And that's what Sally's List has done in the past. And that's what we like to do for other people, is we like to help them see the path forward for creating change in Oklahoma, whether it be in their local community or on a statewide level.
Yeah, the
Wow.
frustrating thing for us is we have a lot of women contact us who say, I want to volunteer for you. The day of licking envelopes is long gone. Maybe we'll have you hand address. We don't have a lot of volunteer opportunities in terms of working for us. What we ask is, who do you know who lives in Tahlequah? Who do you know who lives in Bartlesville? Who do you know? That is our way forward, is having contacts across the state so we can meet the people, the women who are making a difference already. I'll never forget, we were working with a candidate once on we do a narrative session where we go over her life story, and she told us about a program she had set up while she was in high school. It was a food pantry, I believe, and a couple other things. And then we kind of got around to more present day, and she said, I've never really done anything before, any sort of thing in the community. And we're like, wait a minute, we do a big giant whiteboard, we write everything. We said, come back through history with us. That hadn't counted to her. She didn't understand that was community work, grassroots work. So part of this is just getting people to understand they're already doing community work.
They already know what their community needs. They are just being asked to tell other people on their behalf. That is what elected office is knowing your community and being a voice for them, whether it be and that could be an elected office or as an activist. We see so many great activists doing amazing work around the state, and there are multiple pathways to serve. And so while we are very activist driven, I would say, in terms of our belief that there is desperately needed change in this state, I think we're at our core community service driven. We care about the people who our candidates represent, and we care about our candidates.
Okay, first of all, let me say, or to emphasize again, how wonderful you guys are. The impact that you're making to try to change lives here in Oklahoma, and with what you're doing, it serves as a model for communities throughout, whether it's in the United States or elsewhere, because as we said before, yes, grassroots, it starts person to person. And, and that observation leads me to ask one last question. As we make contact with women, the women that we meet, the women who will be a part of the conference, how do we touch them to get them to think about what they can contribute, what they can do? Or in another way, let me rephrase it, the question of, what do I have to offer? How would you address that basic question?
I think my first question back, which is, I think, a nice way to work with people, is, what do you care about the most? And they might say, I care about animals. I care about the environment. I care about hunger. I care about children. So not everyone has to be, as Alyssa said, not everyone has to be elected to make a difference. I think a lot of people have this fear of being involved. It's almost has an unpleasant, for some reason, an unpleasant feeling about it. Putting yourself out. There are a lot of ways you can phrase it, but when you can phrase it as a way of, hey, if you really care about animals and you pick up every stray dog running down the road or try to, why not reach out to the Humane Society? They're looking for people. You can go do something you love. You can make a difference in something that matters deeply to you. So the first question is always, what matters to you? And to that we say, there's something you can do. And not only is there something you can do, but it's a win-win. You're going to do it and you're going to feel better. You'll feel good. You'll feel just warm in your heart. You know, what more can I say these days?
Serotonin
Warm in your heart is really important. When Kendra was the executive director of Sizeless, we started a different organization called Women Lead Oklahoma. And the goal of that organization was to teach women about civics, which many of us know nothing about. The group is no longer around. It was a very difficult group to sustain because the language was scary. The moment you say civics, we want to teach you civics, people are like, oh, I don't want to learn about civics. But the truth is, when you understand civics, it's no
life. It's community. It is the mechanisms of the world around you. Like, it is not something foreign, you know? And I'm sorry to interrupt, Sarah. Jane, go ahead. But I would also say, to the point that you don't have to be an elected official. You certainly don't have to be an expert, because I am not an expert in many things, but I do speak up when I know something is wrong. And I do take action when I know something is not right. And that's all we are really asking for people to do. It's like, we want to empower people to understand that you are enough as you are. You are enough to make positive change wherever you are, as you are, despite the systems that be and their ability to intimidate, manipulate, and, you know, just drive this fear into people's hearts about stepping up, speaking up, and doing something about the problems around them. And so I think that what I would encourage women to do is to contact us and talk to us. Like Sarah Jane said, we love meeting with people. We love coffee and snacks and animals and candles and all things pleasant. So just come talk to us in our office, or we'll meet you wherever you are, and we'll try and figure out a way for you to fit in somewhere that leaves you feeling, like Sarah Jane said, this sense of warmth and purpose and place, which is what so many people, I think, are craving right now, especially after a pandemic where we've been in our homes for so long. It's like, what can I do? You know?
Yeah. And the caveat we always say is, signing an online petition does not mean you've done something constructive. Giving a donation is good, but is great. I mean, I don't want to denigrate giving donations, but actually doing something, even if it's only writing postcards. My sister and her husband live in California. I don't even remember my memory right now is not great, but for the 2020 election, they were writing "Get Out the Vote" postcards to people that were being sent to Arizona, to Michigan, to other states. And they would sit there and they'd find someone, you know, my sister-in-law said, oh, that sounds interesting. Here, take 50 of them and write them. So that's good. I mean, believe me, when you've got that pile of written postcards in your hand, you've done something and it makes you feel good. I do ultimately believe in face-to-face contact, because I think that's the best thing in the whole world, but it's not for everyone. I am the last person to go out and knock on doors for a candidate. I love talking to people, but that one's real hard for me. You know, it's just not in my comfort zone. But there are, even if it doesn't have to do with politics, talk to us. We will send you hopefully in the right direction. We know a lot of people, you know, we know people, we've just been around for a long time. But even if it's about animals, call us. If it's about sustainable agriculture, sit down with us. We'll find the person for you to talk to. We are, you know, community gardening. Alyssa knows who you need to talk to. So in addition to the work we do with women running for office, we like to think we're just helping everyone find the spot where they can make their own difference if it's not running for office.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like is it 411? You know, the like question. Yeah, we're like the 411 of civic help in Oklahoma.
Wow, guys, you are amazing.
You are too.
It you know, in hearing this, it's like light. It is light and enlightenment. And this is what we need. You know, we need that connectivity because it empowers each and every one of us to become more aware of what we can do to facilitate change. Even if it is for the little dogs that's running feral in town, or the community garden, or the local school board.
Yeah.
You know, whatever is needed. And you guys provide such an incredible resource. You're incredible role models and a safety net.
And I would like to add one thing. It's kind of tooting our horn a little bit, but also yours. You allowed us to interview you for a series we have on Facebook. It's called At the Reins with Sally's List. And we are interviewing people involved in business, community, politics, arts, food, every one of them not only doing their thing and what they're interested, but also contributing to the wider community through what they do. And when I feel bad, and when I'm having a bad day and I want to go find my soapbox and stick it on a corner and scream, I take a look at the interviews. We've put up more than 20 so far. It's 2 a week. We will continue doing it. Every one of those interviews, when I'm done, Alyssa and I do them. And when I'm done watching them, it's one more person in Oklahoma who's making a positive difference and is committed to making this a better state for everyone. No one gets left behind. So I do, if you need a pick me up, go to Sally's List on Facebook and just watch one of the interviews. They're all great. Everyone is, we've never done one where I went, oh, they're all great. So, and watch Dr. Anderson's interview. That's also quite wonderful.
Very good.
Sarah Jane, Alyssa, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and contributing to the conference. I know that it will be inspiring to a number of people.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and we are, always honored at the opportunity to share time with you, and we are eternally grateful for your strength and for your commitment and for just general fortitude. You just keep on keeping on, and we're proud. We love you.
And this conference, what the work you've put in.